I often get asked by other photographers, how do you get your architectural photos to look the way they do? What's that secret sauce or final little bit of polish that you put on your photos just to elevate them to the next level? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you in this video. Adding the final gloss to your images should only take a couple of minutes once you've set up the steps that I'll go through here. My workflow for my architectural photography starts off in Lightroom. I do an initial edit to make sure that the photos look really good in terms of color balance, contrast, exposure, all of that. If I need to do any HDR work or luminosity masking, that is then done in Photoshop along with any little retouching and things like that. Once those files are looking pretty good, that's when I leverage the power of a preset in Luminar Neo just to add all these finishing touches. I'm going to show you the tools that I use as part of my finishing process. Once you understand those tools, you can either copy exactly what I do if you want to, or you can fine tune it and tweak it to your own personal preferences. Either way, it's very easy to set up, and once you've followed the steps involved to do that, you can apply this to all of your photos in a batch process, synchronize it across the whole lot, and then just walk away and let Luminar Neo spit out those finished versions that you can send back to your client. If after watching this video you think that Luminar Neo would be a good fit for your workflow, I have a discount code with a link in the description to save you 30% off, and currently Neo is already on sale, so this is going to work till the end of March. So if you want to get it, it's a really good opportunity to grab it now. But watch it in process first and then make that decision if you think it's right for you or not. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so at a glance, here is a project that I shot recently. And just to give you an idea, this is my workflow. Everything's going to be loaded into Lightroom. I'm going to do all of my adjustments here in Lightroom to get my photos looking pretty good. Usually I send a set of proofs back to the architect so that they can actually select the photos that they would like to represent the project. So for example, if they liked this one of the bathroom and they wanted to license this one from me, then that is the one that I would go to work on in Photoshop. Turns out they didn't actually want that photo. So that's one of the great things about sending a set of proofs back to your client, because it allows them to pick the ones that they actually want to represent the project, and you're not wasting your time retouching stuff that they didn't even want in the first place. And then you just get paid for the images that they want to license. I've talked about this in other videos, so I won't go over it here. But that then allows me to end up with a set of images which I have retouched and are looking pretty good already. But like I said, I like to add a little bit more polish. So what I would do is select these photos and then export them directly to a folder as a series of 16-bit TIFFs that I can then apply a preset to in Luminar Neo. We have the ability through Lightroom to use Luminar Neo as a plugin. As you can see here from the edit in list, we could go to Luminar Neo. However, we want to use it as a standalone program. As Luminar Neo loads here, you can see that I usually use it for a lot of landscape editing. It's really great for that. But in terms of our architectural editing, let me show you what it can do. So let's come into the edit section here, which we access from this top bar up here. And we have all manner of tools at our disposal. Some of them are really useful for architectural photography, some not so much. So the idea of what we want to do is ultimately end up with a preset that we'll be able to apply to the photo. So for example, this is a very simple and light preset that I've applied here, but if I toggle the before and the after, you can just see how we've added a little bit of pop and punch to this photo. So on the left-hand side, prior to adding this look, you know, it looks like a pretty nice photo already, but as I draw this over, you can see we add a bit more contrast, a bit more punch. And if you look on the detail on the left-hand side here, this is one of the things that architects and designers really love, this ability to add in all that lovely structural texture that exists in reality that sometimes the camera doesn't pick up as well as they might like. So let's jump to the catalog again, and I'm just going to reset this. So we go to adjustments, revert to original, and we can start again. Incidentally, before we get onto that, I'll just point out that this photo here, I've actually done a sky swap on this in Luminar Neo because the original sky was pretty bland, to be honest, just plain blue. And also this image here, which really wasn't one of my favorite ones from the shoot, but the architect wanted this particular angle. This was actually shot when the sky was grey and overcast, and so I've been able to introduce that sky pretty much seamlessly with Neo's sky replacement technology. So our goal when we're going through these different tools and applying them onto the photo is to try and create something that's going to be universally useful to us. We want it to look good on every single photo. And that's why tools like 𝗏𝗡𝗊𝐴𝑖, if I grab this and start cranking that bad boy up, if we look at the before and the after, this gives us a really nice lift to our photo, for example, and it's going to work on any photo. Because it's driven by AI, it's going to intelligently assess our photo and actually bring contrast, bring saturation, bring local detail, all of that good stuff to every single photo depending on what that photo is. So this is going to be a really useful tool for us. And we're going to look for other tools like that inside the set of tools of Luminar Neo to apply and avoid the other things which are image specific. So let me just come into the edit stack here. Any tool that we apply ends up in this edit stack. It's kind of like a history panel. It's basically a record of what we've applied. So we're just going to start from the beginning. Let's go into the develop tool, and I just want to talk to you about curves really quickly. Let's say one of the things that you like to do in Photoshop is to add some contrast to your photo. You know, you might add an S curve in Photoshop that gives the photo a nice lift. And you do that pretty much to every single photo. Well, that's the kind of thing that I would recommend. Don't do it in Photoshop. Do it in Luminar Neo, and then you can just synchronize it across the entire set. And that's going to save you doing that individually to photos in Photoshop. You can just apply it en bulk, en masse to your photo set here in Neo. The same goes for things like sharpness. If you usually find that you're applying an amount of sharpening to your photos, so for example, this is a little over sharpened, but for example, no sharpening, 100% sharpening, whatever, you know, wherever you set that sharpening in Photoshop, again, I'd recommend don't do it there, do it inside the preset of Luminar Neo, and that way you know it's going to be applied en bulk to every single photo. As well as having access to the curves tool in the develop module inside Luminar Neo, we also have smart contrast, which again is using intelligent contrast to add a bit of life to our photo. What I'd like to do throughout this video is actually push these sliders further than you actually want them, just so that you can actually see the effect that they are having on the photo, and then we're going to dial it back down. But here's an important key with that. We're not going to dial it back all the way. We're going to dial it back to about twice as much as what we actually think we're going to need. Now, why would we be doing that? Well, that will make sense at the end of the video, okay? So just bear that in mind. You might think, oh, he's probably gone twice as heavy with that particular tool than I would. That's okay. That's deliberate and it's intentional. You will see why. So with that in mind, I'm just going to bring the smart contrast down a little bit. And often the techniques that I've shown in previous videos like luminosity masking or HDR, things like that, they are designed to bring back our highlights already. However, it might be a case of I really want to make sure my highlights are protected, so I'm going to build that into my preset and drop the highlights just ever so slightly. Another thing that's useful to build into the preset is a little bit of luminosity noise reduction. If we zoom right into the corner here, you can see that there's just a little bit of noise going on in the file. If I push the luminosity noise reduction all the way to 100, it smooths everything out, but obviously we're going to lose textural detail where we want it. And so again, it's just about finding that sweet spot. I'm going to go with 15 for this and move on from there. Let's have a little look at where we came from and where we've got to before and after. It's probably about twice as heavy-handed as I would want, and that is exactly what I want. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But just bear with me. Right, now the accent AI, we already had a look at that. I'm going to smash this all the way to 100. Let's see, before and after. So it is an intelligent addition of contrast. So this is really useful for us. But again, don't want to go too heavy-handed, but probably a little stronger than I ultimately want. Let's go for 30 for now, before and after. And that's something to bear in mind. You can always come in and make adjustments to these later. Apply this look to an entire set. And if you discover, wow, it's too much, I went too heavy-handed with it, you can come in and bring it back or dial things up if you want. So structure AI, before and after. This is like clarity in Lightroom, but on steroids. You know, it's more intelligent. It's going to look for areas of detail, like in the texture on the concrete or in the wood here, and it's going to elevate that texture. It's also going to look for other little pockets of contrast and try and lift those without sort of destroying the photo. But of course, if we go to 100, yeah, it's going to look pretty awful before and after. you know, it's like some bad HDR right there. However, a little goes a long way, and that's the key with this. We're just trying to subtly improve the photo. So let's say we go for 20, before and after, before and after. Okay, and now let's have a look at where we came from originally and where we've got to. So on the left-hand side is our original, and then let's pull this across to reveal this adjustment. Let's move on from Structure AI, and another really useful tool is the details enhancement. So let's get rid of the comparison view and just zoom into an area that does have a lot of detail already. Now we have access to small, medium, and large details. If you push these too far, again, it looks pretty awful in my opinion. So a really low number here, before and after, can really help to just boost the details in your photo. We don't need to add any additional sharpening because we already did that in the develop module. There's nothing inside the landscape module that we need to look at, but inside the creative section, there's a counterintuitive tool that is actually really useful, and that is the dramatic tool. Now, bear with me while I just put this effect on. Let's push this all the way to 100 and see what's going on. This is the look straight out of the box, and I don't like it straight out of the box, before and after, but if we look at what it's actually doing to the photo, perhaps there are elements of this tool that we can leverage just with a little bit of tweaking. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So look at the local contrast. If I push this up, you know, that doesn't look good. It's starting to look like a photocopy or something. But if I pull the local contrast down, but keep that amount high, we're able to bring a nice bit of brightness through the midtones, which is often where the walls of a home sit. And so by putting some of this effect in, it can actually help us. So the brightness slider, we don't want to take that too high, but also having that default of just lifting that brightness is quite a nice thing to do. And now we can grab that amount slider, bring it all the way back down, and just start to tickle a little bit of that in. I don't know, 15, let's have a look. Before and after, just a subtle elevation of that brightness before and after. Now let me show you another couple of tools that you may or may not want to include, but one of the things that can happen if we start to add too much detail into the photo, things can start to look really crisp, really angular, and the photo can look a little too aggressive. So we might want to soften it off slightly. So there's this tool here, 𝗨ici𝗳𝗁. Now if I push this up to 100 again, so you can see what's going on, it gives a nice sort of ethereal glow, a little bit like a glamour glow from the 80s portraits, you know. I use this a lot in my landscape work, but of course not with that sort of level of intensity, but by putting in a little bit of this, and we toggle before and after, it can just help to sort of imbue the home with a nice little inviting feeling about it. Let me close that down, and another one I'll show you in the professional section here is a really great tool called Super Contrast. You may feel already that we have enough contrast going on in this photo, and to be honest, I do feel that. We want to err on the side of caution, but I just want to show you how powerful these tools are. So this is the highlight contrast tool. So this is before and after. We have the ability to brighten up the highlights or darken them down. It's a really nice control. The same for the midtones as well. We can either brighten them or darken them, and the same for the shadows. We can brighten the shadows up or we can darken them down. And by fine tuning these for your photo, you can actually really finesse a nice level of contrast. When I'm setting these sliders up, I work one at a time. I do push the amount all the way to 100, and that allows me to clearly see which direction the slider needs to go. And then I bring the amount down to a place where I feel happy with it. So for example, let's push the midtone contrast up, grab the balance and start tweaking that and see what we like. So you may feel that the shadows have just got a little bit too dark and lost interest. So for example, we could grab the shadow contrast slider and then just take the shadow balance to the left, which gives us a brightening effect, and just sort of lift up those shadows slightly. So before and after, before and after. There's really not a definitive, this is the correct setting to have. I'm just showing you what these tools are capable of. So before and after. To be honest, for me, it's over the top. A subtle little addition like that, that might be quite nice. Okay, so let's have a look where we came from and where we've got to. So before and after. The super astute of you may have noticed that with the addition of these tools, things have got a little warmer in color balance. And so you can come into the color tool, come into the HSL, the saturation section, And if you find that your yellows just lift ever so slightly, which is something I noticed does happen a little bit, you can just drop those down slightly. At the same time, if you're a real estate photographer who really likes to saturate those blues in the sky, you might want to build in a bump in the blue saturation into your preset. Often the architectural photographers like to reduce and minimize the blue so that the sky has less impact in the photo before and after. So you can make these really subtle shifts in your color tones and build that into the preset as well. Let's do a quick before and after, and you really notice that pop that's going on now, before and after. Sure, it might be a little bit over the top, but don't worry, we're going to get to how to finesse that. But if you're happy with the general look of the addition of all those tools, and just to check what we put in there, you can come to that edit stack and you can see that we've got 8 tools that make up this look, before and after. We can come down to this little icon here. We're going to click Save Preset, call it something appropriate, and now that preset is available to us to apply to a whole set of photos so we can batch process them. And here's the key, we do not need to apply it with that maximum effect that we've created here. We can dial that back to the amount that we want. So we can halve the effect, have quarter of the effect, whatever we want. So let me show you how it will work on a set of images, and then if we need to do any fine tuning, we can do that. Because what I've shown you here was kind of a rough example, more of a demonstration of what the tools do and the benefits of including them in your own preset. So you can see as I hover over other alternatives of my architectural presets, they apply the tools in a little bit more of a finessed way. But let's keep working with 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗵𝗀𝗀 that we created before. And before I make adjustments to the actual overall amount, I just want us to remember a particular setting that we might have applied. So if we open up Enhance AI, you can see that the Accent AI slider that was responsible for that lovely contrast throughout the photo, we had set that to 30. Now watch this. If I come into the preset section and then grab the amount slider for 𝗥𝗲𝗄𝗵𝗀, you can see that I can actually reduce the overall effect of the preset that we just created. So currently we've got about 1/3 of that look. So if I toggle the before and the after, before and after, you can see that we've elevated the quality of the photo, but we've done it with much more subtlety. If you want to go a bit more heavy-handed, then of course you could set this wherever you want. But my point is, you don't need to have that set to 100. It's better to set the preset up a little bit more aggressively than you intend to use it, and then that gives you the ability to just dial it back to a place where you feel it looks much better. But now the proof is in the pudding, as it were. We are going to apply this to the rest of the photos in the set and just check that it looks good. And if it doesn't, if there's certain things that aren't quite right, you can go in and just adjust them and then resave that preset. So it might take a little bit of fine tuning to get the preset exactly as you want. And potentially you might want to make a few presets. You might want to have one for interiors and one for exteriors as well. But if you set this up in the right way, there is no reason why one preset can't solve all of your polishing needs. Polishing needs? What's wrong with me? Okay, I'm going to jump back into the catalog section here, and we know that we have the preset applied to this photo here. So all I'm going to do is press Ctrl-A to select all of the photos, right click and come to adjustments, and then I'm going to synchronize those adjustments. Of course, we could use a hotkey if we want, but there you go. And now if I open up any one of these photos and I come down here to the eye icon and I just click this, we will see the original edit that I did in Photoshop. And when I let go, we see the preset we just created applied with 60%. Perhaps it was still a little heavy-handed and maybe we only wanted about 30%, but look, it's easier to see. This is with our preset applied at 60%. Let me show you the original. So this is our Photoshop edit. This is with our one-click fix, before and after, before and after. And if I come in close with the before and after, you can see that everything's just had a really nice lift to it. As I do the before and the after, you can see that not only was this preset working really nicely for interiors, but it also looks really nice on the exteriors as well. So before and the after, a really nice bit of pop there. If I jump into the edit stack, I just wanted to bring your attention to how this is applying it with 60%. If I jump into Enhance AI, you'll remember that we had that set to 30. By grabbing the preset's overall amount slider and dropping it down, we've ended up with 60% of the original number we put in. So the 30 has become 18. For structure that was set at 20 before, that's now become 12. And so on up the chain of the editing tools. So a couple of other points you may want to know about Luminar Neo if you're considering getting it. It can be used as a standalone editor. However, I wouldn't actually recommend using it from start to finish for architectural photography. And the two main reasons for that are, firstly, the geometric corrections inside Luminar Neo. While it can make geometric transformations, they're not as good as Lightroom's tools for doing that. So I prefer Lightroom for that point of view. I also prefer Lightroom for the profiles as well. So in terms of an initial develop, yes, Luminar Neo can do a full develop raw on any photo, but I still like Lightroom more for that side of things. I also like Lightroom's digital management system because all of my folders and photos are all loaded into a catalog of Lightroom, and I just can't bear the thought of kind of bringing that all over to Luminar Neo. So I'm sticking with Lightroom for that point of view. So for my architectural workflow, I see Luminar Neo as an augmentation to Lightroom and Photoshop rather than a complete replacement. But yes, it can do that if you really want it to. The other thing that's a really great benefit with Luminar Neo is the HDR functionality. Yes, we can merge to HDR in Lightroom. However, Lightroom doesn't do tone mapping for us. It's still up to us to bring out all of that information using highlights and masks and all that stuff to recover that highlight and shadow information. Luminar Neo's HDR merge tool borrows from the Aurora technology, and if you're not familiar with that, it was a revolutionary engine that was developed for HDR that finally took HDR from looking like illustrated crap and clown's vomit into the world of, wow, that actually looks like reality and how I see it with my eyes. That engine is built into Luminar Neo. I've covered it before in an HDR video. In fact, if you want to check it out, that's that video there. And in the meantime, if you want to get hold of Luminar Neo, they are currently running that 30% discount in the link in the description below. So I would grab it now if you're interested. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.